Still no sign of a police officer's fourth wife.
Volunteers aren't giving up a search for Stacy Peterson, but police in Bolingbrook, Illinois are suggesting she's the victim of foul play. Yesterday, they named her husband, Drew Peterson, a suspect.
Bronski suggested a contest idea. Win a date with Drew.
I'll do a dating game with you.
Drew? Me? Up to you, man. I don't know. That's a lawyer. Yeah, why not?
A cloud of suspicion has hung over the 53-year-old police sergeant from the start. Stacy is his fourth wife. His third, Kathleen Savio, was found drowned in this dry bathtub in March of 2004. Her death then was ruled an accident. In a bombshell announcement, the county coroner told police that ruling was a mistake. Investigators now plan to exhume her body.
There are strong indications that it was a homicide.
What they have are these allegedly incriminating statements that Drew Peterson has made as recounted by family, friends, etc., of both Kathleen Savio and of Stacy Peterson.
Drew Peterson, as we said earlier, he is under heavy scrutiny this morning, still considered a suspect in the disappearance of his fourth wife, Stacy. His third wife's death was ruled not an accident, but a homicide. This big development, Drew, was this issue last week where a coroner's report after an autopsy now rules that your third wife, Kathleen Savio, died not of an accident, but of homicide. Considering that you were already under the magnifying glass, how did you greet that news?
It was kind of shocking. We believe her death was accidental. That was with the fresh autopsy. Now, all of a sudden, there's new autopsy with an old body, let's say, and it's been ruled a homicide. I'm kind of suspicious of it.
You don't think that the coroner's report is accurate?
I'm not sure. I think it needs to be scrutinized and looked at a little closer.
The man accused of murdering wife number 3, Kathleen Savio, has just been found guilty of murder in the first degree. The reading of the verdict came quickly.
Murder 1, the stiffer of the two charges facing Drew Peterson, a maximum sentence of 60 years in prison. And it's a jubilant scene here out on the lawn of the Will County Courthouse where supporters of the Savio family have finally, in their view, got something to celebrate in that somebody is responsible for a murder, which if it were not for the disappearance of Stacy Peterson, I don't know that we'd be standing here on the courthouse lawn today. Keep in mind, Kathleen Savio was found dead in her bathtub. A coroner's inquest found that accidental. And really, the only reason why there was any kind of pressure, both publicly and from law enforcement agencies, to re-examine that was that Stacy Peterson was missing.
She could be next door hiding in the basement, or she could be in Thailand, where supposedly she was reported safe. She was a little girl and it's a big world. She could be anywhere. When Stacy comes back, instead of looking at this woman for abandoning her family, they're going to turn her around. And it's like, well, she wouldn't have left if you weren't such a bastard husband. What the...
Welcome back to True Crime Brewery. I'm Jill.
And I'm Dick. Good evening.
We have a great episode for you tonight. It is Above the Law, The Wives of Drew Peterson.
Drew's kind of a scumbag.
I think that's what most people are going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the consensus.
But let's talk about him.
Okay. Well, I'll go over it a little. On October 28th, 2007, Drew Peterson's fourth wife, 23-year-old Stacy Peterson, she disappeared without a trace. She was supposed to go to her sister's house to help her do some painting that morning, but she never showed up. Drew Peterson said that he received a phone call from Stacy that night telling him that she had left him for another man. Insisting that Stacy would never have left her children, her family went ahead and reported her missing. Authorities and volunteers conducted an extensive search but did not find Stacy. Drew Peterson quickly became a suspect in this case. He seemed unconcerned about his wife's whereabouts, joking with the media and making offhand and disrespectful remarks about Stacy. Stacy's disappearance eventually led to investigators to revisit the death of Drew's third wife, Kathleen Savio, exposing Drew Peterson as an abusive husband and a murderer. So there are many aspects of this case to discuss. But first, I see that Dick has a lovely bottle of Bourbon County brand barley wine ale here that he'd like to tell us about right after I read a couple of our recent 5-star reviews for you.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so the first one is Rockin' by Earth Sprite. I am truly impressed with this podcast. The hosts, Dick and Jill, bring a lot to the table with this show. They try out different motives and possibilities. I like how they hash things through. They ask each other lots of questions, easygoing, easy-to-follow cases with great explanation of the facts. The beer reviews are great. I used to belong to a beer review group, so I enjoy hearing Dick's descriptions of the beer, and I like how the beer is paired to the area or the state that they will be discussing. Keep up the good work. I am hooked and look forward to hearing more. And it's signed Butterfly Girl 1212 from Braidwood, Illinois, which is funny because our case tonight is from Illinois.
Yes, so she might like my beer that I've chosen.
I bet she will. It's a good beer from all I've heard.
That it is.
So welcome to the brewery, Butterfly Girl 1212.
Welcome.
Now the next one is Relationship Goals by Laura B. I think I'm saying that right. Learn about different beers while listening to a mellow discussion of terrifying subjects. I love it. Not a big fan of untrue crime movies, but I would probably continue to listen as I find the harmony between Jill and Dick very inspiring. I listened while I knit all day today, and I had a great day off. All right, Laura B., welcome to the brewery.
Welcome to you, Laura B.
One more short one. It's True Crime Brewery Rocks by, and I love this name, Determined to Make Change. Love the low-key, quiet tone of this podcast. I also enjoy the easy exchange between this husband and wife team as they share their perspectives on the cases. Welcome to the brewery, Determined.
Another nice review. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and I love that name, Determined to Make Change. That's a good one.
That is.
Okay, why don't we hear a little bit about this beer, because I'm hearing great things already.
Well, not to put it too overly.
Okay, don't overstate it.
But this is a world-class beer. It
All right.
really is. So we're going to look at Bourbon County brand barley wine ale. It's brewed by Goose Island Beer Company in Chicago. It's an English barley wine. Now, barley wines are one of the strongest of beer styles. You can expect anything from an amber to dark brown color, with aromas and flavors ranging from intense fruits to intense hops. Body's typically thick, and the alcohol will definitely be perceived. In other words, these are big boys.
Well, I think the barley wines generally are, from what I've seen being your wife, what I've noticed over the years.
They generally are.
Yeah.
But these are going to be in the 10 to 14% range.
Big boys.
Big boys.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing an English barley wine, and the English varieties tend to be a little more rounded and balanced between malts and hops than the American version. To me, the American version is just more about the hops and the alcohol content.
Americans like their alcohol.
Yes, well, so do the Brits, but anyway.
Okay.
This is an English barley wine. The other cool thing about barley wines is that they're one of the styles of beers that can be cellared, and you can hang on to them for years and years.
Okay.
And if you look in my little cellar,
Yes.
I have Bigfoot barley wine.
From what years?
Starting at 2007.
Yeah. Is it just one from each year, or did you keep a few from each year?
Well, sadly to say, someone's been drinking all those, so I have one left from each year.
Okay.
So my plan is next year in 2017 to pick off the 2007, and I'll do one each year.
10 years ahead of time.
So
10 years later.
I'll have a 10-year-old barley wine from Sierra Nevada every year.
Now, do they taste different after that time?
Oh,
something
yeah.
must happen. What happens?
Yeah, I mean, the hops and the alcohol tend to fade with time, and the malt sticks around. I've found usually around 3 to 4 years is when you can start seeing that take effect.
Okay. And is that a good thing?
Well, it depends what you're looking for.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people like the young ones and really like that big alcohol hit.
Well, and the hoppy hit.
The
I like
hops.
the hoppy hit, too.
And others like it more mellow. So the older American barley wines probably more resemble an English barley wine in that they're a little more balanced.
Okay.
Anyhow, let's do our beer of the evening, Bourbon
Sure.
County brand barley wine ale.
Okay.
It's maybe not the prettiest beer. It's kind of a brackish brown color. There's a little bit of light escaping through the glass. There's an off-white head that's settled quickly to a film. It has a very great aroma, caramel, vanilla, bourbon, and dark fruit. And the taste goes along with that. Vanilla and caramel up front, a little bit of subtle raisin taste, and the heat of the bourbon. It's more of a heavy beer, big beer. Drink one, share the rest with a friend.
Okay, well, thank you. That's a great review. So So if you look down to your right, Dickie, you're going to see I have 2 empty stools down there at the quiet end of the bar.
Yeah, I hope there's no one sitting in them.
No, I've been able to keep them so far. I gave the bartender a little bit of lubrication to keep them open for us.
Okay, so those are ours. So there's 2 empties down there, and there's nobody around there.
Yeah, I think we better slide down there now before we get started so we can have a little privacy at the quiet end of the bar.
Let's do that before other people move in on it.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
All right.
Go for it.
Okay. So who were the wives of Drew Peterson?
Yeah, he's been a busy boy, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Like 4 wives?
Yes. Wife number 1 was Carol Brown. Drew and Carol met in high school in Villa Park, Illinois, and they went to the same senior prom together. And they married in 1974 and divorced in 1980, after Carol found out about Drew's flagrant infidelity. They had 2 sons together, Stephen Peterson and Eric Peterson, who are now in their 30s.
So was he a policeman then, Drew?
Yes.
He's been a cop his whole life, right? Well, he served in the army or in the military, and then
Correct.
Then he joined the police force.
Then he was doing undercover narcotics work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So Drew Peterson's second wife was Victoria Connolly, and they married in 1982. Victoria has alleged that there was a history of abuse during her 10-year marriage to Drew, and Victoria's daughter, who lived with Drew and her mother from the time she was 8 years old until she was 17 years old, has also spoke up to say that Drew abused her mother, and they divorced in 1992. So he married Kathleen Savio 2 months after that divorce.
So I guess you would be thinking that he'd been having an affair with Kathleen because she was all ready to go. I mean, 2 months, that's too brief a time to meet and woo and marry someone.
Even for Drew, yes.
Even for Drew. So he had something going on the side with Kathleen while he was still married to wife number 2.
That's a fair assumption. From all accounts, she knew that he was unfaithful, but it wasn't until he was throwing it right in her face that she insisted on the divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Drew and Kathleen had 2 sons. They had Thomas in 1993 and Christopher in 1994, and they divorced in 2003. It was reported that between 2002 and 2004, police were called out to the Peterson house 18 times on domestic disturbance calls.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 times in what, 2 years?
A little less than 2 years. And this, in fairness, it does include calls that were made for returning the children late and disputes they had once they were separated.
Okay. So they weren't all disturbances. They were just complaints a lot of times.
Yeah, I think they were disturbing as well.
So they were separated at this time, or divorced at this time. When did they divorce?
They divorced in 2004.
And the complaints were from 2002 to 2004?
Yeah.
So they weren't together?
No.
She kicked him out?
Well, no. I don't know. Kind of, I guess. They were fighting over the house and whatnot.
Yeah.
But he already had a girlfriend.
Right.
Right.
The 4th wife.
Yes.
The future 4th wife.
Right.
Now, I heard or I saw, maybe I did both, that while he was still married to the 3rd wife, Kathleen, he was bringing his new girlfriend, Stacy, sneaking her into the basement of the house, having sex with her while his wife was upstairs.
Yeah, totally.
Man, that's brazen.
It's really bad. Not just brazen, but horrible, yeah. So in March of 2004, Kathleen Savio's body was found in a waterless bathtub. And her death was initially ruled an accidental drowning by a coroner's jury. But the thing about this jury was that it included a police officer who personally knew Drew Peterson, and he reportedly assured the other jurors that Peterson was a good man who would never have hurt his wife. So there was some unfairness going on there.
In retrospect, it sounds that way.
Yeah.
Although, if there's no obvious signs of a struggle or anything, and she's found dead and the autopsy shows drowning, maybe he wouldn't be a suspect.
Well, there were some very unusual things, actually, on the site.
Were there?
Yes. Yeah. And by all accounts, everybody, neighbors, friends, Drew Peterson and Kathleen Savio had a very tumultuous relationship.
Right.
Yeah, so violence and yelling and fighting weren't really unusual.
So was she afraid that something could happen to her by him?
Yes, and we'll get to that later, but she had told people that he had told her he could kill her and make her look like an accident,
Well,
which is just what we think happened here.
okay.
And also with a lot of these police visits to the house, according to Kathleen's supporters and Stacy's supporters, the local police, when they came, because Drew was well known in the department, they really didn't act as if they might if he wasn't one of the police. I mean, they acted differently. He did get some preferential treatment.
Yeah, so he was getting some slack.
I think so. That's what they seem to think.
Yeah, because after all, he's a member of the force.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be doing this to his wife.
And if he was, then we really shouldn't have done anything about it, I guess. I mean, if he was doing that stuff, they were going to let it go.
Well, that's a tougher stretch for me.
Well, I mean,
I think if it was ambiguous, they would cut him some slack. If it was more definitive that he had actually been abusing her physically, they would have acted on that.
Well, maybe. But, he really was very patronizing. He was very disrespectful. And he was very good, from what I could tell, at speaking about her as if she was kind of the hysterical woman.
Sure.
Overreacting. It's her time of the month, all this horrible stuff, he would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his fellow cops would tend to take his side.
Well, I think that there can be kind of a macho type of thing going on there.
But I'm still thinking that if there was stronger evidence of abuse, that they wouldn't be taking his side.
Well, probably.
Okay.
But we don't know. Now, 49-year-old Drew married 19-year-old Stacy Cals in October of 2003. So actually, the divorce with Kathleen did go through in 2003. It actually went through 8 days before he married Stacy.
So he's reducing his time between marriages.
Yeah.
He's gone from a couple years or so to 2 months to 8
days.
8 days.
Yes.
All right, Drew.
Yeah. But in 2004, when she was found dead, they still hadn't worked out their financial situation. So there was still stuff to be worked out that they were fighting about. But he married Stacy in October of 2003. That's 8 days after his divorce from Kathleen was finalized. And Drew and Stacy, they went ahead and had 2 children. She was pregnant with one during the affair. She actually had their first baby before they got married.
Right, because she wanted to fit into the wedding dress.
Yeah, so there was a big overlap here, let's be honest.
Yes.
Yeah. But they had 2 children, a son and a daughter, and they were born in 2003 and 2005. And their son Anthony was born 3 months before they married. So that gave her enough time to get back into fighting shape, get into that wedding gown.
Right.
Yeah. But I find it kind of shocking, 49-year-old marrying a 19-year-old. Am I the only one that finds that crazy?
Well, I wouldn't think that would be crazy for thinking that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
A 30-year age difference?
That's a lot. Well, especially when you're talking about a teenager. She's still a teenager.
Right. To me, that's verging on the creepy side.
And she's already had the baby, so I'm thinking the baby was born when she was 18.
Yeah, 18 and 19, but still.
And her friends say that they actually got involved when she was 16, although she said she was 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, big difference, I guess.
Well, not really, right? But
No.
I think it's still a significant age difference.
I think so.
It's not like, even a 60-year-old and a 30-year-old. That's still a lot.
It is. But I feel like a 30-year-old would probably have a little more to say about it than a 19-year-old.
For sure.
Who's just coming out of childhood, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's dazzled by him, He's a big shot cop.
Yeah,
showers her with presents and stuff.
Right, he bought her a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, was going to buy her a house. So that's a big deal to a 19-year-old.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so friends and family, they said that Stacy was planning to leave Drew when she disappeared, and that was on October 28th of 2004.
So like
2007, sorry.
Like the other relationships, this one deteriorated into claims of abuse and so on.
Yeah.
And she was ready to leave him.
She was. So Stacy had been Drew's alibi on the night that Kathleen died, and she had expressed concerns to a pastor and her sister that she thought Drew was responsible for Kathleen's death, and that really scared her.
Duh.
Yeah.
I mean, his alibi was that she was with him? They were sleeping together or something?
Yeah.
So he couldn't have been out.
Right.
But that's not true.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. Actually, when she was questioned, we don't think that she was really allowed the opportunity to be honest at that point.
Right.
And it has a lot to do with her disappearance, I believe.
I'm for sure.
Yeah. Now, Drew and Stacy, they lived in a house that was about 2 blocks away from his house that he'd shared with Kathleen. And some neighbors claimed that Drew and Stacy would torment Kathleen. that they would rollerblade by the house, they would moon her and give her the finger. So it's just so immature.
Well, I can see the 19-year-old doing that, but not the 49-year-old.
Not horrible, yeah. Plus, he has children with Kathleen in that house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super irresponsible, disgusting, really. Now, when Drew was still with Kathleen, he was known to sneak around, and as you said, he brought his 17-year-old girlfriend, Stacy, into the basement of their home to have sex with him. And the thing that he told Stacy was that his wife was horrible, demanding, and they were basically divorced. He was living in the basement, so he gave her the whole, well, we're really only technically married. We're not really married.
Sure.
It's just legal.
That's a good style. It's
Which,
good,
you know.
But that's a good line.
Yeah, it's been used a lot.
It has. Maybe overused.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't understand me. We're not really married.
Yeah, we're just staying together for the kids.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah. Now, Drew asked a neighbor to go inside to check on Kathleen that day. He was bringing the kids back.
The day she was found dead.
Yep.
Okay.
So he's bringing Go ahead, I'm sorry.
He's bringing the kids back. I'm just trying to set this up a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
So the kids are at his house. He's bringing them back.
Yep.
And the door's locked.
The door's locked and nobody's answering.
And nobody's answering.
Right.
And so he's thinking, or the thinking is, something's wrong here because she should be ready to take the boys back.
That's right. So he grabs a neighbor, or maybe two, and asks them to go inside and check because he doesn't want to go in there. You know, they've had some disputes.
Yeah, well, I could certainly see that.
Yeah.
I mean, if he broke into her house, she could use that against him.
Yeah, but the children told him, why don't we just go back to our house and try again later, right? Wouldn't that be the reasonable thing to do?
That'd probably be the more sensible thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But Drew has to establish things.
That's what I'm thinking. So he has the neighbor go in. The neighbor finds Kathleen dead in her bathtub. She has a head wound. There's no water in the tub, but there is some blood. Another thing is that the rug that was normally by the bathtub was missing.
Mm-hmm.
There were no towels or clothing nearby. And the shampoo and conditioner bottles were sitting on the ledge of the tub like nothing had been disturbed. So I think if he weren't a friend of the other cops, maybe they would have been a little more suspect to this scene.
It sounds like there's enough suspicious stuff to draw attention to it not being an accident.
Yeah, was she 40?
I think around there.
Yeah, she wasn't an old woman. We'll find out later, her toxicology test was totally negative. She had no drugs or alcohol in her system.
Right.
So it's a strange circumstance.
It certainly is.
Not a huge bathtub either. So It's not like there's a lot of room to be flailing around in there.
No.
So the previous night, Stacy wasn't sure if Drew was in bed with her all night. In the morning, though, before Drew left to take the boys to Kathleen's house to return from the visit, Stacy noticed that Drew had started a load of laundry, which he never did laundry because that's not a man's job, right? That's the woman's job.
Well, yeah, it's your homemaker's job.
Right.
You cook and clean house and do the laundry.
He was not the kind of guy that would do laundry, right?
Right.
But he'd started a load of laundry, and when she looked in the washing machine, it contained some unfamiliar women's clothing. So that was curious.
Very.
But then when Stacy was interviewed by police as Drew's alibi, the police allowed Drew to be in the same room beside her.
Now, why would they do that? I mean, that's not standard procedure, is it?
No.
I mean, you interview people separately.
Right.
So he was using his power as a police officer to be in the room with her.
I think so.
Yeah.
And
make
obviously
sure that she
intimidating
said the
her.
right thing.
Absolutely. That's certainly what I would think. She didn't feel free to speak whatever she thought, that's for sure. And she
not at that time anyway.
No, and this is, let's remember she's pretty young, she's naive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's easily intimidated by him. He's got a lot of control over her.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't until after Stacy disappeared that Kathleen's death was actually re-examined in the way that it probably should have been in the beginning. Kathleen's body was exhumed and underwent forensic examination in November of 2007. And Dr. Michael Baden, a former New York City chief medical examiner, conducted the exam at the request of Kathleen's relatives and some Fox News investigators. And he concluded that Kathleen died of drowning following a struggle when her body was actually placed into the tub. And then there was an official autopsy ordered by the county in 2008, and this one declared Kathleen's death was a homicide.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So what have you got? I know you have the autopsy reports.
I do. They're not complete. The initial one in 2004 has the opinion that the death was due to drowning.
Right.
Accidental drowning.
Does it mention any injuries or wounds?
Not really. And this is the interesting thing to me.
Okay.
So it goes through the diagnoses, and there's evidence of drowning in terms of lung edema, fluid in the lungs, fluid in the brain, water in the sinuses. But then they say no significant trauma in the autopsy. But then in the comment, they say that there's a laceration to the back of the head that might have been related to a fall into the tub.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they sort of dance around it. He says no significant trauma.
Yeah.
But there's some trauma to the back of the head, which probably left the blood in the tub.
Well, I'm thinking a young woman with no drugs or alcohol drowning in her bathtub is very suspicious. A laceration on the head, I mean, even if you fall and bump your head, what are the chances you're going to actually go unconscious and drown?
Right.
Mighty slim, right?
Mighty slim.
Yeah.
But that was the original one.
Right.
So on the re-autopsy,
sure,
there was some significant injuries, and there's 8 mentions of external evidence of injury.
Okay.
Plus 1 internal. Anyway, so the external evidence, the head wound, there was an abrasion on her buttock. There was 3 bruises on her lower abdomen. There was a bruise on her thigh. There was bruising on her shins, on her wrist, or one of her fingers, and her elbow.
Okay.
So there's a lot of scrapes and bruises there.
And this is not a woman without a history of abuse. She'd actually gone to the hospital 4 or 5 times with injuries from Drew Peterson.
Right.
Since their separation, so the end of their marriage and after their marriage ended.
Yeah.
She had been injured enough to go to the emergency room.
So there's some external injuries. And the interesting thing, and I'm not sure how the first autopsy didn't find this.
Yeah.
There's a 2-inch fresh hemorrhage in the right hemidiaphragm. So the diaphragm's the big muscle that separates the abdominal cavity from the chest cavity.
Okay.
And that's what helps you breathe and everything.
Sure.
So she had a hemorrhage in the right diaphragm.
So what does that mean?
So that could indicate some blunt trauma to that area.
Okay.
But there's no mention of that in the original autopsy.
Yeah, that's why I wonder.
There's no mention of the external injuries in the original autopsy other than the scalp laceration.
That seems like more than just an overlooking. That seems like an actual effort to cover things up to me.
Well,
very suspicious.
We don't know. We don't have the full autopsy.
We don't know, but I'm just saying that seems very suspicious to me.
And most of these things were 1/2 inch or less in size.
Sure.
So maybe.
But this is a suspicious death. It's not.
It is a suspicious
unexpected death at all.
I mean, like you said, you have a relatively young woman who is purportedly drowned in her bathtub.
Right. A woman with a recent divorce from someone that she's complained of abuse from.
An acrimonious divorce.
Right.
But nothing happened.
No.
And I guess the only reason anything did happen was because his 4th wife disappeared.
That's right, but Kathleen's family immediately thought that he had something to do with it and tried to tell the police that he did.
Yeah, I guess
tried to have it looked into more, and it was ignored.
They were telling the wrong police force.
I guess so. They did say that they had the state police come in at that point.
Yeah. Did that do anything?
Didn't seem to.
Not at the time,
from what we
anyway.
can tell, no. So it's a little strange to me. It's a little worrisome that happened.
It is.
Yeah. I think that Kathleen Savio really got a bad deal here.
At the beginning. I mean, she did eventually get avenged.
Well, after she was dead for several years. I mean, what good is that?
Well, it's better than being dead and due to a drowning.
Yeah, but I would just propose that if something had been done during the marriage, towards the end of the marriage, to protect her, maybe this wouldn't have happened in the first place.
I certainly agree with that.
It's just And it's just a sad statement on domestic violence, which is a huge issue, internationally, but definitely in our country.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's a sad statement.
We could talk about that all night long.
We could. I just want to bring attention to it here a little bit because it's definitely an issue.
Yes.
So when Stacy disappeared, there were 4 search warrants that were issued and carried out on Drew Peterson's property, including the seizure of his firearms and both his and Stacy's vehicles. So like we said, these houses were just like 2 blocks apart, and once Kathleen was dead, he was able to sell her house and get over $300,000. And there was a $1 million life insurance policy on Kathleen that went to her 2 sons, which of course Drew took custody of these 2 sons and had access to that money.
So he's come out looking pretty good financially.
Sure. And he did not allow these children to spend time with Kathleen's family either. He really tried to poison them against her family.
He's a sweetheart, isn't he?
Yeah. And one of her sons was actually there during many arguments. And when he tried to speak out, he was actually quashed by not only Drew, but some of the other policemen, as far as bringing forth what he heard in their interactions after and before the divorce.
So he was ignored.
Yeah. And I think he was raised to think that, this is how men treat women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Drew announced plans to retire as a Bolingbrook, Illinois police sergeant effective in December of 2007. So that's a couple months after Stacy disappeared. And the Bolingbrook Police Pension Board, they voted to allow him to collect his pension. They'd been trying to prevent that, but there was no way that they could, because the only way to stop the pension from coming is to have him convicted of a felony related to work. So he got about $7,000 a month after he retired, which is an okay amount of money.
That's not a bad amount, is it?
No. And Illinois State Attorney James Glasgow told the press that he believed Kathleen Savio's death was a homicide that was staged to look like an accident. So, hallelujah.
There you have it.
Yeah. Now also, Reverend Neil Shorey, a pastor at Stacy's church, he reported that Stacy had told him that Drew had killed Kathleen shortly before her disappearance, and that she was just really afraid of Drew at that point and planned to leave him.
So she's confessing to the priest that his alibi wasn't airtight, that he might have been gone.
Yeah, telling him that she really thinks that he did do it, but now that he knows that she knows, that she's really, really nervous and afraid for her own life, which totally makes sense to me.
Yes, it does. And there's some other stuff that hints at what's going on with Drew.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a guy named Rick Mims, who was a longtime friend of Drew's. He admitted to the police that he and Drew bought 3 blue containers from a cable company where they both worked part-time in 2003. And he provided photos of the containers to the police.
He did.
Now, you might want to ask, what's the deal with the containers?
Right.
Wow. Drew's stepbrother, Thomas Murphy, allegedly helped Drew carry a large blue plastic container from Drew's house to Drew's SUV. And he told investigators he was afraid he had helped Drew dispose of Stacy's body. And in fact, 2 days after all this, he attempted suicide.
Yeah.
And we also have neighbors reported seeing Peterson and another man hauling a big blue barrel out of the house shortly after Stacy disappeared.
Yeah, and I don't think we can overstate that this was traumatic to his stepbrother.
Apparently.
Yeah. And his stepbrother was not a criminal, but he did look up to Drew. And when he went to help him with this, Drew had said some things to him about, well, you couldn't kill for me, but you'd be okay with knowing that I did it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Sure.
And then he just freaked out because when he helped him pick up the container, it was warm to the touch.
Yeah.
Which some people have proposed that there was some kind of decomposition chemical in there that would cause a heat reaction to make the body decompose quicker.
Right.
Right?
It could be.
What kind of things would do that?
Oh, things like lye, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Acids, bases.
Now let's go to Breaking Bad, where they put bodies in tubs.
Right.
And they did this with bodies a lot in that show.
Hydrofluoric acid.
I only go to it because I really like the show, but I heard that wasn't really accurate on the show, that it doesn't break down bodies like that.
No, it doesn't.
But it probably does speed up decomposition.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And any strong acid or strong base will dissolve things a little bit. I mean, it's not going to dissolve it into pure liquid, but it'll take away a lot of the parts.
And it would cause heat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's horrifying. Huh?
Yeah.
That's really horrifying.
So you've got somebody testifying that they picked up these containers, and you got another guy testifying that he helped Drew lug a container out.
Sure.
And you've got neighbors who saw him, Drew, and another guy loading a big blue drum into a car.
So what's wrong with this picture? Why wasn't he immediately picked up?
Why, indeed. Stacy's sister wanted Drew to take a lie detector test about his knowledge of a blue barrel or container.
Well, her and a million other people.
That she saw in the garage 2 days before Stacy disappeared. So, we know it was at Drew's house.
Yep.
We know after Stacy was gone, it was loaded into Drew's car.
Sure, but we don't know where it went after that.
We don't.
No. Yeah. Well, Peterson denied that any container was missing from his home, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about his behavior at this time, because Stacy went missing. There was a lot of media attention, and then it turned to Kathleen's death and how that might have been suspicious.
Right.
So the media was pretty much camped outside Drew's home.
Oh, yeah?
Stacy's sisters and some of her neighbors actually had big signs up, "Where's Stacy?" trying to look for her, trying to talk to the media.
Yeah.
Right? And his behavior was deplorable. To just take something from the Trump campaign, it was deplorable.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
And he appeared on all the big shows.
He did.
The talk shows.
And we'll get to that. But what about when he goes outside and he makes jokes? He called one of the reporters, he told her, "Oh, you're really hot."
Yeah.
That was gross.
Gross, creepy.
So he wasn't even trying to put a good face forward.
No.
Yeah.
No, he was like he was above the law.
Above the law,
He
yeah.
couldn't be touched.
That's right. He actually came out with a camcorder and was videotaping back at them.
Yeah.
He thought he was pretty funny, pretty charming, actually. It was disgusting.
And did he have a lawyer at this time? I mean, if I was his attorney, I'd be kicking him in the balls and say, "Stop doing that stupid stuff."
Yeah, he did get an attorney, but I'm not sure if he had him in the beginning there. But actually, a couple of his attorneys were almost as yicky as, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say yicky, as Drew was.
Well, we can think of other adjectives, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, give me a better one, because that's lame. Greasy.
Yeah, slimy.
Slimy's a good one, yeah. So in April of 2008 is when Drew and his attorney Joel Brodsky, which, slimy, I'm sorry, but yeah, he was very slimy to me. They went on Larry King Live and were interviewed about Stacy's disappearance and Kathleen's death.
Yeah, that was a fine performance.
Yeah. Yeah, what really did you think of that?
Well, I'm not a Larry King fan to begin with.
Well, I don't think there are a lot of them out there,
so
but okay.
To me, it was a puff piece. It was just designed to be publicity for Larry.
Yeah, he didn't really put any hard questions to him.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
And there were some people that got to call in.
Yeah, there were a couple good calls, though.
There were.
Yeah.
But they were sidestepped.
They were. But what about the lady that called and said, "Hey, Drew, I was just wondering if you are any relation to Scott Peterson because you guys are so much alike."
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was good.
I liked that a lot. But basically, he said that, Kathleen would never have allowed him to abuse her because she was just a tough chick or something like that, right?
Right.
And then he said that Stacy would once a month say that she wanted a divorce. During winter period.
When it was her time of month.
Yeah.
She'd say, "Okay, Drew, it's time to get a divorce."
And then once that was over, everything was wonderful.
Yeah.
So that was his statement on that.
What
Which
a
made
misogynistic asshole.
Oh, it just made me want to throw up so bad. And I'm sure I'm not the only one.
No. And his lawyer was basically encouraging all that.
He was sitting there smiling, yeah. Yick. So that just left me nauseous. And then in December of 2008 is when he had this engagement to Christina Rains.
Yes, he's already looking for wife number 5.
Yes. So Glenn Seelig, he was a publicist hired by Joel Brodsky, and he confirmed to the media that Drew was engaged to a 23-year-old named Christina Rains.
So I see he's keeping the roughly 30-year age difference.
Yeah.
Attaboy, Drew. Okay.
Yeah. So in January of 2009, some film footage confirmed that Christina moved out of Drew's house. So she'd moved out. And Christina's father, Ernie Rains, who was kind of salt-of-the-earth type guy, how would you describe him?
Yeah, down to earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
No nonsense.
Seemed to care about his daughter, though.
Yep.
Yep. So he was actually outside yelling at Drew.
Yeah.
To give him his daughter's stuff.
They were
She's
trying
getting
to
the hell out of
get her
there.
possessions.
And he actually said that he'd issued an ultimatum to his daughter that she needed to choose between Peterson or her family. So good for him. You know, he probably saved her from something.
Yeah, except they got back together.
That's the thing. So she went on the Today Show with her father, and they claimed that the engagement was just a publicity stunt, which I think her father must have talked her into doing that.
Right.
She seemed very immature for 23.
Yeah.
She acted kind of like a 15-year-old.
Oh, she did.
If that, yeah.
And she had a tough time answering the easy questions that they were throwing at her.
Right. And she kind of had this smile and
Yeah.
kind of a silliness about her that I didn't appreciate. But like you said, she later went back to Peterson prior to his arrest and moved back in.
Yeah.
Jeez.
No, I don't know. I would love to know the whole story about that, because her father seemed pretty angry.
Yeah.
Before.
Oh, sure. Poor Ernie.
And now I guess he's out of the picture, so she made her choice. If he said it's between your family and Peterson, she took Peterson.
Right, yeah.
But I guess they never actually married, did they?
They didn't, but she actually had 2 children that she moved in with him.
She had 2 children by him?
No.
Oh.
She had 2 children.
Okay.
And she moved in with him. So I guess she'd gotten kind of an early start in life. And she said that she knew Drew since she was 15, obviously. Not him.
No.
So she'd known him since she was a teenager, and she was actually friends with Stacy at some point.
Yeah, that would sound about right. They're about the same age.
He's kind of fishing in the puddle outside in the local pond.
Yes.
Creepy.
That doesn't begin to describe it.
Yeah. But, you know, he really seemed to enjoy the publicity about this engagement.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think he thought that it really made him quite the guy, that he could get these young girls to move in with him and stuff.
Well, you know, he's this macho cop.
Yeah, but this was totally taking advantage of girls with issues.
Well, he doesn't see it that way. He sees it as being a really good-looking, cool guy that women of any age would be attracted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did watch the Lifetime movie Untouchable, where Rob Lowe played Drew Peterson. And Rob Lowe did a good job portraying that type of personality.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I know those movies are all over the top, but Rob Lowe was sufficiently creepy.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems over the top, but Drew Peterson in real life was over the top. So I think it was well done for the most part. It was entertaining anyway, and pretty much true to life from what I could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed to be from all the stuff we've read and watched.
Well, and his behavior was similar. He would make the snarky comments. He would be very patronizing to women in the film. Very similar to the real life guy.
Yeah. I mean, they had to draw on mostly fact.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. Entertaining anyway.
Yeah, I don't know about interesting.
Okay.
So we're moving along. He's been arrested in May of 2009. He was indicted by the Will County Grand Jury and arrested for the murder of Kathleen.
Right.
Bail was set at $20 million.
Sure. Which was a good way to keep him in prison.
He was
jail.
in prison.
Yeah.
Now, we know how slowly things move through the courts. So we go from May 2009 to July 2010. At this point, the court found that hearsay statements indicating Drew Peterson killed 2 of his wives were not reliable enough for a jury to hear at trial. Huh. However, Kathleen and Stacy's statements were crucial to the prosecution's case as they lacked direct evidence.
Yeah.
So this looked like a blow to the prosecution.
It did. But they were able to do something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They kept working on it. So in April of 2012, we're almost two years further down the road.
Wow.
An Illinois appellate court ruled that prosecutors could use 8 statements made by both the victims prior to her death.
Prior to Kathleen's death.
Kathleen's death.
Okay.
One victim. And by Stacy Peterson prior to her disappearance.
Yes.
The Illinois legislature helped to pass a new Illinois law that became known as Drew's Law, which allows prosecutors to enter hearsay statements into evidence under certain conditions.
And what conditions did they come up with? Something to do with the person had to be either threatened or murdered, or something prevented them from speaking otherwise?
There has to be, the first thing is that the person couldn't be there.
Right.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, the legislation, they actually permit courts to consider statements from unavailable witnesses, as they put it. And if the prosecutors are able to prove that the witness was killed to prevent testimony and that the statements were unreliable, then they could be used under this Drew's Law.
Yeah.
And that was actually passed and put into effect with this case.
With this very case.
Very crucial.
Yeah, because they didn't have much else.
No, I mean, he was a cop, and as much as we hate him, he did have some knowledge in how to do this, right?
Well, he did. I mean, to this...
I mean, I wouldn't call him smart. I would totally stop. I would not call him smart because he's such an asshole, right?
Right.
But he did have some knowledge that he was able to use to help himself out here.
Sure.
Yeah.
But to this individual, this person who's looking at the studies...
What individual?
Me.
Okay, to you.
I'm looking at this, and I think there's enough things going on with the purported drowning to make it a homicide.
Yeah.
And not too much of a stretch to think about who would have done that.
Yeah, but did they have any proof of who did it? That's the thing.
Well,
Stacy's not there, which I think would have been their clincher. If he hadn't gotten rid of Stacy, then she would have been able to testify about the clothing and about him not really being there.
Yeah.
So,
but they ended up allowing that because of Drew's Law.
They did, yeah.
So we have the stuff about Kathleen and all the difficulties and her belief that he was going to kill her.
Yes, all the things she told her family and friends.
And we've got Stacy telling the minister that she might have lied or might have provided an alibi for him, and he probably was involved in her death.
Yeah, and she told the minister about the laundry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it worked.
Yeah, so September 6th of 2012, Drew was found guilty of the premeditated murder of Kathleen Savio. And jurors actually said that the most compelling evidence was the hearsay statement, so without that law, it may have never happened.
It wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Now, has he ever been charged with the murder of Stacy?
No.
So she's just a disappeared person?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Obviously a lot of suspicion, but it's never been brought forward.
Yeah.
Now, when he was...
What he needed to do was tell this new fiance living with him that he had done it.
Yeah.
So she could testify.
Good God, if she lived long enough.
But he'd have to kill her if he told her anything.
Well, sure, of course he would.
But she's still alive, right?
Yes, she did visit him in jail when he was first arrested for a while, but it just didn't last long, obviously. I mean, once he was in jail, he wasn't able to buy her things and manipulate her, so it didn't last long then.
And wives number 1 and number 2 are alive and well.
They are.
So he didn't do anything to them.
Well, wife number 2 said that he actually did threaten her with a gun 2 or 3 times. But when they got divorced, she did not want his pension. She didn't try to get half of his pension, which seems to be a big part of the problem he had with Kathleen and with Stacy, is not wanting to give up his pension.
Right. They're going to steal my money.
Well, he worked damn hard for it.
Yeah.
And these chicks shouldn't get it, right?
Right.
These broads or whatever.
Whatever he thought of them.
Yeah. So in February of 2013, Drew Peterson was sentenced to 38 years in prison. And at that time, the state's attorney, James Glasgow, he said that they were going to start looking into Stacy Peterson more heavily and trying to get a solution to that. So
what was he found guilty of? First-degree murder?
Yes.
And he only got 38 years?
Yeah. That's a fair amount of years, especially when you're in your 50s.
Yeah, don't you usually get life or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Anyway, he got 38 years.
Yeah.
Which is it's sufficient at that age. Maybe if he was 18, I'd worry about it, but...
Yeah, well, 38 years would get him to
life.
90 years old.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that.
Unless he gets paroled, but no chance of parole, right?
Well, not if you're going to act like a dickhead, right?
Well, I don't know. That was the terms.
Oh. Well, I think if you want to get time out for good behavior, you have to start having some remorse and start...
That might prove problematic for Scott. Drew. I did the same thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so he was actually going in for 38 years. They're going to look into Stacy's case, but they just haven't been able to find Stacy's body. So, geez, where the heck could it be? I mean, there is a canal, right?
Well, that's a great question.
Let's think about where could he have put her body. They've done massive searches.
They've thoroughly searched the area.
And then some, I would say.
Yeah. Probably it's not buried or anything like that, because they could have found it with cadaver dogs and stuff.
If you put a body in a barrel
But how about if you float a barrel in the water or something, or sink it in the water?
Yeah, would something like that never float to the top?
I guess if
you're a
it's...
scientist. If you have the body in there and it's sealed in,
Yeah.
there's not going to be any air to lift it, right?
Right.
So it probably would never come to the surface.
It could be forever under the water.
But he must have had to put it somewhere on his own because the stepbrother only helped him get it into his SUV.
Yeah.
So I would think he had to do something with it on his own after that.
Yeah. So I would think that in terms of trying to prosecute him for the murder of Stacy, the fourth wife, you're going to have to find her body.
And I don't think that's going to happen.
And it hasn't happened yet.
No.
So probably won't.
There is the possibility that one of his sons may have overheard it. But they're not talking.
Right.
Yeah. So in February of 2015, actually, Drew was charged with solicitation of murder for hire. He was trying to arrange a hit on the state's attorney, James Glasgow.
Now, that just boggles my mind.
So this was a revenge type of deal.
How stupid can you be?
Yeah.
I can see a little bit from Drew's side that he's going to get a bunch of more years tacked onto his sentence because they're going to charge him with murder of Stacy. But
yeah, but
what
at
the
that
hell?
point, who cares?
Yeah, he's already going to be 90 years old when he's finishing his first sentence.
Well, and if he ever wanted to have an appeal, this is going to ruin it for him because
yeah, isn't it?
If you try and kill the state's attorney, your appeal is really not going to matter.
So how did they find this out? Did one of his jailhouse buddies snitch him out or what?
Well, he actually talked on the phone about it, and all calls are recorded.
Duh.
So there are recordings of him trying to elicit someone to arrange a hit on this state's attorney, James Glasgow.
Wouldn't he know that as a cop, that the calls are recorded?
Gee, you would think so.
Yeah, well, anyway.
Whatever, yeah.
So they got him really dead to rights.
Yeah, so he was convicted on May 31st of 2016, so just a few months ago. And for this, he was sentenced to an additional 40 years in prison. So there's no way in hell he's getting out now.
So now he's in for 78 years.
Right.
So he'll be 130 years old.
127, I think they said, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's in for life.
He is, which is good, but it's still not really closure for Stacy's family because they still don't really know what happened to Stacy.
No. I mean, I'm sure they have a good idea what happened to Stacy.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
But they don't know for sure.
No.
And I'll bet you he's not going to say anything.
No, a decent human being, and I say that, a decent human being. There are people that commit murder, do horrible things, and after being in prison, they do have some regret. Right.
So I'd say
someone
maybe
with
not necessarily a decent human being, but a person who's grown to have regret and remorse for what he's done.
A shred of conscience.
Right.
Yeah.
Might say something.
Right.
Okay.
Just to ease the pain of the people he's victimized.
Right.
But not Drew.
Not yet, anyway.
No.
Well, he's still got 70 years left.
So he has some time to think about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Another really deplorable thing about Drew Peterson is that his children, now he has the two 30-something-year-olds, and one of them was actually fired from the police department for not cooperating in the investigation of Drew.
In the investigation?
Yeah, and he took Drew's guns that were confiscated, and he ended up losing his job as a policeman. So he seems kind of a little bit Drewish.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the other older son, but then he has the 4 younger sons, the 2 from Kathleen and the 2 from Stacy.
Right.
And the really sad part is these kids don't see Stacy or Kathleen's families at all.
Why not?
They're raised by Drew's 2 older boys, and they're not allowed to see them, to see family members of Kathleen or Stacy, because Drew was given custody, and this hasn't changed. I'm not sure why. So even though he's in prison, his older children have custody.
Well,
of course, even the younger ones now are teenagers.
Yeah, but why can't the grandparents sue for visitation rights or something?
I don't know.
They should get them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't really say that Stacy and Kathleen came from the greatest of families. I think he kind of was a perpetrator against girls that had issues, right? So he really went after women.
Yeah.
With, some issues in their background.
Sure.
So I'm not sure what's going on with those families. I know that Kathleen Savio and Stacy each have sisters who are very involved in this and want to see the children and aren't allowed to.
Well, it seems to me there should be a way to see the children.
Yeah, absolutely, but no.
Okay.
So from what I've read, no, that's not true. They haven't had a relationship with them. And they've probably been poisoned against them, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think at this point, there's not going to be a relationship.
No, because even the two young ones are in their teens now, so I imagine Kathleen's sons are in their early 20s or something around there. When were they born? Stacy's were born in 2003 and 2005.
Yeah, so were they mid-90s?
Yeah.
Early mid-90s, so
yeah.
20.
Yeah, so they're young adults.
Yeah.
But they've probably been poisoned against them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, of course, Drew does claim to be innocent.
Well, of course.
When he was actually convicted of Kathleen's murder, he had a total outburst, screaming that this was unfair. You know, he was so cool and calm when it came to anyone else's life being destroyed. But as soon as his was destroyed, you know, it was a travesty. It was horrible. It was just, you know, totally unfair. Had a screaming fit, for lack of a better word. He had a fit.
I'm sure that went over well.
So even Joel Brodsky, after that, kind of turned his back on him and said, whoa, I don't know this guy. I never saw Drew Peterson act like this. I guess his true colors finally came out. So even Drew Brodsky and those attorneys...
Even slimeball lawyers can have a conscience?
Yeah, they turned their back on him.
Yay.
Now, during the trial, I'd just like to note that there was Joel Brodsky and two other guys whose names I don't know that were on the law team. But they would come out to the press conferences when the press was outside the courtroom, and they were just disgusting, joking, you know, wearing these dark sunglasses, being very disrespectful to the victims and the victim's family. Just scumbags.
Just like Drew.
Yeah, they were very much like that. But then once Drew was convicted and had this outburst, they totally bailed on him. Which shouldn't be surprising, I guess.
It's not.
No. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Drew is in jail until he's 127 years old.
Yeah, he's in Juliet for, 78 years.
And are they still trying to decide whether they're going to prosecute him for the disappearance of his fourth wife, or is that done?
I don't think anything will happen unless they find something.
Okay. But it's not a closed case. There's still...
It's still open, of course.
Yeah.
The only thing that could... I don't think they're going to find her.
Well, I don't think they're going to find her alive.
Well, no. I don't think they're going to find a body. I think her body's been destroyed in some way.
Yeah.
And they're probably not even going to find her remains. I think the only way that anything would really come of it is if someone was to have a conscience and come forward, someone that knew something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if Drew says, I did it.
Not bloody likely.
No. Well,
I wouldn't wait for that to happen.
I'm not going to wait for that.
No. I don't think he'll ever admit to anything. He hasn't.
He can't.
No.
In his mind, he didn't do any of that stuff.
Right.
He denied any of the abuse that people accused him of.
Yeah, he's never admitted to anything.
He's never admitted to one single thing, so he's not going to admit to anything.
I mean, he really hasn't even admitted to infidelity. His claim was, well, that marriage was over and I was working on my next relationship.
Yeah.
So he never even really said, oh, I'm sorry I did that for anything that I know of. I mean, I've looked at hours of footage. I've never seen him apologize for anything.
Totally unapologetic.
Total sociopath.
Total.
Yeah. Narcissist, for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a recurring theme, isn't it?
Yeah.
Narcissistic personality disorder, sociopath.
Yeah.
I mean,
seems to be something.
I guess it's a common thread in murderers.
I think if you're a murderer, that it comes in handy to be a narcissist or a sociopath.
Yeah.
Makes it easier, obviously, because you don't have a conscience or empathy or compassion.
You're blameless.
And those things get in the way of that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it for that.
We had fun tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah. And also, I want to mention our little contest, which I announced on Twitter earlier today. So we have a new contest, Win a Snifter. So the way to win a snifter...
Win a snifter?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
So between now and the end of September, if you do a 5-star review on True Crime Brewery, then you can win a snifter. We're going to take everyone who does a 5-star review, and we're going to see which one we like the best. Not necessarily the most flattering, but the most interesting, the coolest.
Yeah, so
the most effort went into it, I guess.
You don't have to fawn all over us.
No, but I'd like to see some effort.
Yeah, I want creativity.
And for our friends that don't listen on iTunes, our Stitcher, our Google Play, our website listeners, all you need to do is go to our website and go to the Contact Us section and just write a little message that says, I want to win a snifter, and give a little review right there, just for us to read.
There you go.
Because I don't want anyone to be not included.
Open to all.
Yep, and then the end of September, we'll decide who it is, and make sure you put your email address in there. Or, well, I guess if you do it on iTunes, we're not going to have your email address. We're just going to have your name. So we'll announce it on the air, and then whoever wins can send us their email address. We'll contact you, get a mailing address, and all that stuff. We'll get all that worked out. We'll send out a snifter.
But no beer with it.
No, it's BYOB.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can send me beer if you want, and I'll review it on one of our shows.
Yes, and I've gotten lots of suggestions for beers and for crimes, but nobody's actually sent a box of beer yet, but I'll let you know.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you would be kind enough to follow us on Twitter at TieGrabberPods, or we would love it if you would like us on Facebook, and also we're on Instagram, TieGrabber Podcasts. And like we said, this contest where you will win a free snifter. Just do a 5-star review on iTunes before, are there 31 days in September or 30?
There are 30.
Okay.
30 days has September, April, June, and November, etc., etc.
Okay. So you have until September 30th to do a 5-star review, or to go to our contact page, do your review, and say, I want to win a snifter. And then we're going to see which one we like the best. We're going to read it on the air. We're going to get your shipping information, your address, and we're going to send you a snifter. And then what we want you to do after that is take a picture of your favorite beer in the snifter, and we'll put it on our website for everybody to see.
Well, that's cool.
It'll be fun.
All right.
Yeah.
I suppose I can't enter.
No, you already get to do all that stuff.
I'll be a judge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you in a few days with our next case.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See ya.